This is an unsponsored video that contains products provided without charge by the manufacturer for demonstration purposes. All opinions are my own. Last year, I made a buyer's guide for various kinds of permanent holiday lighting, and my number one pick, called Bright Home Lights, got a lot of questions because there really aren't many videos about them. For those of you that were waiting for more information about Bright Home Lights, you don't have to look any further, because I have installed them on my house, and I'm going to show you how I did it. Coming up. Now these are permanent outdoor holiday lights that you can use not only for holidays, but you can use them for any day. Every occasion you can put some kind of a setting on, and you can even just use them for accent light all year round. Because they're color matched to my soffits, during the day they're practically invisible. Now I just have white soffits, but they can be color matched to any color soffit. The first step in this process, before you even consider ordering anything, is to lay out and understand where you want to put lights and how are you going to run the wires to them. When I started this process, I decided that I wanted to obviously do lights over the gable, over the garage. By the way, I should mention that I'm on a corner lot. That's why my house is kind of catty corner. So the gable over the garage faces one street. And then, of course, I've got this long gutter that I call the walkway in the front, the L shape in the front as well. The front gable, you can see, has an overhang, so I wanted to put lights under that overhang, but then I also wanted to be able to outline the roof, so I wanted to put them on the gable itself as well. Because it's a corner property, the sides and back of the house are actually visible, so I went and I figured out, well, what's the length there along the back of the house, as well as on that side of the house too, so that way it would stand out prominently on the corner of the lot. Now, the easiest way that I've found to measure, now I have an iPhone, I don't know how this works on Android, but there is an app called Measure on your iPhone, and you literally can hold it up and pick a point on your house and then just walk. And it draws a line virtually on the screen, and it gives you a really good estimate of how long the distance is. And so that's what I did, and you can see a screenshot here of what it looked like. It really was a decent estimate. Saved me the trouble of having to get up on a ladder or anything like that. So I highly recommend doing it that way, at least to give a rough estimate of how much each one of those runs is going to be. Okay, the next thing I did was I took my roof outline and I kind of put it into this Google sheet. Then the next thing I did is I took my measurements and I figured out how many segments, or how many, I should say, tracks I thought I was going to use. Now, what that meant is I had to translate from feet into meters. And then I plotted on here where I thought I would need power injection. Now, the rule of thumb that they use for bright home lights is that power injection happens roughly every 10 to 13 sections or tracks. I wouldn't need one for the blue line because the blue line only had 10 sections, so that would be great. I then plotted out, like you could see here, line 1 is going to be orange, and that was going to be 23 tracks. And what I did is I said, all right, how many power injections do I need? So I knew I needed 1. That's what this P1 is. And I wanted to inject power after 12 tracks. Okay, if there's 23, I didn't need 2. So I figured I'd put 1 in the middle. And then what I did is I took those numbers and I figured out what's the length in feet. And that's how I calculated how much of each size wire that I would need. 2 conductor, and I looked into 3 conductor, but I decided to not use 3 conductor. I decided to use 5 conductor. Thought it would save a little bit of space. And where I used it basically was from the controller here all the way around to this point here. And I did that because 5 conductor wire has 3 of them. 3 wires is needed for the blue line, and the other 2 wires are used for this power injection. Okay, so I had the 5 conductor wire going over here, and then I had this power injector wire coming over here from there to there, and then I had this long one going all the way around here. And so that's why for 2 conductor wire I needed a 200-foot spool, is what I wound up getting. And I also then had a power injection from this from where the controller was all the way up and around over here. Now, if you've got an attic that you can access, you might be able to save yourself not only some wire, but it might be a lot easier to run them through the attic rather than through the channels the way that I did, because it did get tight with all the wires in here. So this entire plan is approximately 245 linear feet. So keep that in mind, because when you come to brighthomelights.com, which I have linked in the video description, I am an affiliate of Bright Home Lights, so if you do buy them through my link, and I'll make a little bit of a commission, and I do appreciate that. But there's different ways you can buy Bright Home Lights. You can buy them as a complete bundle that comes with a whole bunch of stuff, including a controller. You can buy just the tracks themselves, and you can build your own controller, which is a really good option if you're a little bit of a geek and you don't mind doing that kind of thing. I built one that I used for the past couple of years on my house, but that only had 2 outputs, whereas the one that I got now has 8 outputs, so this one's much more substantial. You can see what's included here. Not only did it come with the controller has a 600 watt power supply, and it has 8 data lines, but it also has 8 power injections coming out of it as well. It came with 12 extension cables. It came with 4 power injection cables and 4 male and female pigtails. Now, I knew I had an outlet right here, so I was going to put my controller right here in my garage in the corner, and that was the first hole that I drilled up there to put those wires through to the soffit. And they all come out. In fact, you can see that hole there. I'm going to fill it with caulk, but you can see there's 2 holes up there that were made a little bit too close to the inside. So I'm just going to fill them with caulk, and they'll become invisible. Now, there are a few tools that you're going to need. Absolutely, you're going to need a screw gun. This is an impact driver, and you're going to need a cordless drill, or any kind of drill. And I'm using a 1/4 inch drill bit here. Now, what I chose to screw them up, originally, I was using, well, these are sheet metal screws, but they're square drive. And these are number 10, 1.5 inch. Now, the problem with 1.5 inch was they were grabbing the vinyl, but they were not grabbing the plywood underneath. So I actually switched to 2 inch, and they work much better. But you can see they are square drive, and I use a square drive bit here. And they grip very well, and they don't get tear out like Phillips head screws do. And the other thing I like is this little thing, because it holds the screw, and I have less fishing for screws that I drop. So that thing works really pretty cool too. Another thing you'll see me using are grommets like these. They don't say anything in the instructions on doing this, but I think it's a good idea, because that way it prevents the wires from getting cut when going through the aluminum. Now, the next trick was to get the other line from here in this soffit up to there. And to do that, if you understand the way framing works, there's like solid wood right here. So that's why I needed that second hole, and then I drilled a hole up through it. And that was really tricky. So this is a closer look at that drill bit. You can see it's a 3/4 inch drill bit. It's got a screw end on it so that it digs into wood, and it's 54 inches long. So I invested in this when I was doing work at my daughter's house on the living flip, and boy, it came in handy to drill these long holes. Next thing that is really useful is this, which is a fiberglass wire running kit. This was really useful in fishing the wires through the soffits. In addition, an MVP tool was, this is an endoscope. It's not very expensive. It is a bit of a luxury, but I tell you, you drill a hole through your soffit and then you stick this up and you can see what's up there. So you're not going to drill into anything that, pipes or wires or anything like that. So I think this is really, if you're doing it yourself, this is a very valuable tool as well. And it even comes with tips on it that you can put magnet or even a little hook on it. And using this in conjunction with the fiberglass rods, that's what enabled me to pull all the wires. So I use this from this hole right here to get the wire up into this cavity. And there's another hole under here for the wires to come through there. And then they follow the track all the way around. So there's another hole up in here underneath this track. And I had to drill again through wood in here to bring the wire through a hole in this track. And that's because I wanted to put lights on the back of the house. Now I just used my regular miter saw with a carbide tip blade. It cut right through the aluminum like butter. Just go nice and slow. Now these tracks do not come pre-drilled. So what I did, I chose to put the screw holes so they lined up with the ridges in the soffit. And that way, if for whatever reason I decided I wanted to take them down someday, or somebody after me takes them down, the holes will not be visible. They'll be between the slats in the soffit. Now I want you to learn from my mistakes, because I wouldn't do it this way again. At this point, I'm putting up all the tops of the tracks, the thin parts that actually get attached first. And putting them up, I was following the aluminum soffit trim that was put by the builder or whoever put on the siding. And it wasn't always straight. And so there were times that I had a tough time putting the tracks on because of that. And so things that I learned were definitely to not put them so tight, use a bigger drill bit so they have a little bit more slack, and also don't put them all up ahead of time. Put them up one at a time. Now I really recommend making waterproof splices outside, and I love these things. These are shrink wrap. They also have solder right inside there. And you could use a lighter to melt these, and you can also use a heat gun. Certainly, and this heat gun I probably have had for 30 years, but works great. This heat gun is great outside in the the wind, whereas a lighter will blow out. Now, these I originally got in a kit here, but you can see the majority of the ones that I used were the red ones. So you can save time and just get the red ones, and you can see I had to get more because I ran out. So, but these things are really great. I must say, putting in these strings into the tracks, just so satisfying. It's like popping bubble wrap. That's the kind of satisfaction. But it would be helpful to have a helper who could do this while you're doing something else. Now, when it came time for my first power injection, which is kind of like over the porch area, my front door, I wasn't going to be able to fit the cable in there, the splitter, the way that they provide it. So I had to be a little bit creative. So what I did is I actually split the lines, and then I used these clamp-on connectors, splicing connectors. And these are typically used in cars and things like that. But these are not specifically waterproof. They do make them so they have gel inside, so they're more waterproof. But these are not. And they'll be fine because they're in enclosed tracks and they're not going to get wet anyway. So, but that's what I had to do to get everything to fit in here. And here you can see what it looks like when I was done. Now you can tell my power injection is working because those lights are blue on that new string. And they stay blue until I connect the pigtail or the connector, the X connector, because that's when it starts getting data, and then you'll see the color start to change. Now here's another tip for you. The weight of the wire for the power injection, down the line, etc., they actually were so heavy that they were pulling my tracks down after I put them up. So I found that I could just use a spring clamp to put it on the gutter, and it took the weight off of it and made it trivial to put them up. Now you can see on the peak over my garage, I used two full sections to begin with, and I mitered them at the same angle as my roof. And I did that by using some scrap wood. Well, I took two boards and I Googled what the angle is for a 12/5 pitch, because I assumed that's what it was going to be. And I was wrong. So then I got the angle for a 12/4 pitch and adjusted this angle, brought it up to the gable, and sure enough, it matched. So then I knew what the angle could be. Now all of my wires came through this soffit right here, and they came into this track. Now in that direction, I needed 3 power injections to go that way, and then I also needed 2 data line to go that way as well. So that was a lot of wires, and that's why I chose to use a 5 conductor wire to bring me over to the corner over there. Now over here in this corner is where I had that 5 conductor wire terminate. And from there I split it, that I needed a power injection here. So 2 of the wires are used for power injection, and the other 3 wires are connected to this pigtail, which you can see I painted white. It didn't stick very well, but I painted it white. It's right up there by that gutter. And that's what feeds, those 3 wires feed this other line that does the gable. Now speaking of the gable, on the front of my house here, you can see there's an overhang. So I chose to put lights underneath the overhang, which is typical, but I also wanted them to be on the roof line. Now in this gable, where there's no overhang, I had to make a decision. I could either mount them so they were facing out or facing down. I chose to face them down. And to do that, I'm side mounting them, which means I drilled holes in the side, but I also did that through the hole so that I could actually access them. It was pretty challenging, but I gotta say, it worked out okay. But then after I attached them, I had to get the tops on them, and I also had to get the string through that hole. I had to get that light through the hole where I put the screw in, and believe me, it was a challenge, but it worked out okay. It looks great. So they are a little bit unusual in the way that they're installed, but it worked out fine. And because I'm on a corner property here, you can see I put lights all the way down on this side as well. So that way, all my neighbors along here get to enjoy the view too. Now you can see my house is set up on a hill a little bit here, and that just makes the lights look even better because you can see them all from the street. So that angle was useful not only at the peak, but also over here. You can see how right there I mitered that to be the same pitch. But now, of course, when you have a square end, you can just use an end cap. From every corner, I always start a run with a full section, and then I'll cut it down the end if I need to. Now this one obviously was not a full section, that's only a half section. I needed 5 lights there. So I actually cut off the end of the string, and that is a separate string. I can unplug that. It's got connectors on both ends of it. And over here, this string of 5, exactly the same. That's got just a little string with connectors on both ends that I could replace if I need to. Up in here, I always start with a full one at the peak, and I came down as far as I could, and this one had 2 extra lights here. So in this case, I actually made a small string of 2 lights, and that was a little bit overkill. So on the other side, I only had 1 extra pixel. So with that 1 extra pixel down the end there, all I did was splice that into the string of 10. So now this is a string of 11. If something goes wrong with that string, I can't just swap it out. I will have to do some work on it. But everywhere else, the strings are replaceable. They are no more than 10. All right, I'm gonna cut to the chase and really show you how, at the end, this is like my last run. So I've gotten better at it, and I'm gonna show you my best practice. So what I did is I started with this top piece, okay? And I cut it. I cut about 6 inches off of it. And then I drilled my holes, but I was drilling my holes to make sure that they were lining up with the ridges in the soffit. Now, if you don't care about lining yours up with your soffit, that's fine. You can just have somebody down on the ground just popping two or three holes in these things anywhere you want and just go right ahead and put them up. The other thing I recommend, if you're going to be working on a ladder, is to use a bucket and use one of these things, which is to hold the bucket that's made for painting, but it works for any bucket. And then that way, you can minimize the amount of time you have to get up and down the ladder. You can take your screw gun, your drill if you need to, whatever else you need, you can put right in here. Now, a couple of other pointers. Don't make this hole too tight. You want it so that it moves a little bit. And you also don't want them really too tight to the soffit. Right now, this one is actually a little bit tight, so I'm going to loosen it up a little bit. And that way, it's just got a little extra wiggle room. Gotta take my power injection line. Make sure that's in there. And they pop up that easy. If they don't, something's not straight. But you can see it's got a little bit of give in it, which is fine. And this is where my power injection is going to happen. So that's going to be the next thing. And but what you can see is that the top is about 5 inches back from the edge. And there's a reason for that. Now when I take this top and I slide it on here, now it's guaranteed that it's going in the right direction. And I've got a little bit of adjustment here, but it lets me mark where I want the holes. And I've only been putting 2 holes in, and that's all there is to it. Just mark the holes, and then I'm ready to go with the next piece. Okay, first I'm going to put my power injection cable on here. All right, that's ready to go. Now, I've got my straight piece here. That goes on the existing one, and the holes should line up exactly where I wanted them. And they do. Now, I'm using my 2-inch screws, and these have a square drive, and I use one of these things to keep them nice and, you know, I don't have to hold it with 2 hands. Anything you can do so that you can work on a ladder with 1 hand makes it safer for you. I'm going to start at this end. Not too tight. Okay. And then I'll put this one in. Good. Now I'm going to connect up this light. This next string should go on as soon as I plug it in. And it did. All right, now this is going to be a tricky one because this has a lot of wires in it. These things definitely are a pain, I will tell you, when you're dealing with the power injection. They are big, but definitely doable. That just gets popped on and slide it down so it's nice and tight with the other one. And that's that. That's my last power injection that I need to do. Now to cover these wires, I'm just using these corner brackets, which make things really convenient and look really professional. Now, if you didn't want to use that, or you have a longer jump, you can use this kind of an end cap that has a cutout for a wire. You can put them on both ends and have the wire run between them. And at the end of the run, you use an end cap that has no cutout. And they work really well. But I mean, look at that. That is just such a professional look right there. Nobody would ever know I did it myself. So when I say these are a professional product, I mean that pros actually install this style of light. They're so nice and clean, straight lines, no wires are visible, and these are color matched to your soffit so they're invisible during the day. But the other thing is that these are designed for maintainability. And what do I mean by that? Well, I got news for you. LEDs don't last forever. They may say they're permanent outdoor lights. Permanent does not mean they will work forever. So these truly are permanent and they can be maintained. The beauty of this is because the strings are exactly the same length as the track, I could pop this down if there was a light out, or if this failed in some way and the rest of the string went out, then I suspect this is the string that needs to be replaced. Very simply, could take this down, pop in a new string because they're exactly the same length, and just change with these two connectors. It's that simple. So design for maintenance is really important to me. And think about it, the longer your strings are, the harder they are to work on. How are you gonna take on with one of those peel and sticks? Those are 15 feet long. How are you gonna get those down and from the second floor of your house to change a bulb in them? This I could take down, I could splice out one of the lights if I need to and put it back up. But like I said, I recommend keeping some extra strings around just in case. What do you see? Oh, pretty lights, huh? Yeah. All right, I'm sure you have questions, and if you do, please leave me a comment down below. I will leave links to Bright Home lights, as well as to all the other things that I used in the video description below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And from the rest of the video, I'm gonna show you what these lights look at night, because let's face it, that's what it's all about, right? So enjoy the rest of the video, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one.